Hi good lifers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be having a look at grabbing some wild garlic. We are a little bit at the end of the season here, but we have decided that we're going to put some wild garlic into some pesto and give it to our helpers for our wedding. So hopefully a nice little homemade pesto for them. So if that's something you're interested in following us along doing, join us in the video. So I'm here in a local park today. There is an event going on, so if you can hear music, sorry about that, I'll try and cut it out. But we're in a local park today having a look at this incredible, as you can see here, patch of wild garlic. As I said, we are a little bit at the end of the season, so some of it has gone to flower already, but there's plenty here for us to catch. And I'm actually here with G today. Look, you can see him, he's just there. So he's already busy picking wild garlic. Let's take you with us so you can see what we're doing. So we've got our foraging basket ready. G has just gone into the patch to find a load of garlic. We're trying to find the leaves that are a little bit greener rather than the leaves that are a little bit dead. Sorry?
The younger leaves.
The younger leaves. So generally they're the ones that kind of grow up from the middle rather than the outside leaves that are a bit kind of grotty at the moment.
Good. They're all fairly good, but you get a lot more of a delicate taste and they aren't quite as stringy with the newer ones. As you get older they become a little bit more fibrous. And the good thing is that you can actually eat the flowers. They're quite a mild garlicky taste, but they are lovely flavour, really mild garlic instead of the strong bulb flavour that you get from a shop bought garlic.
So we're really fortunate to be in this really big woodlands near us, and the whole ground is just covered with it. This whole area here, you can see, is basically wild garlic and cleavers. There's a few other bits in here, like we've got some cowslip here as well, but mostly, yeah, it's wild garlic and cleavers. And if you watch our first aid balm video, which we will stick in a card above there somewhere, you know how useful cleavers are, so we might pick some of them as well today, we'll see. So if you're considering picking wild garlic, it's a really great idea because it's a really lovely fragrant plant, and obviously it tastes like a nice mild version of garlic. Works really nicely in kind of a nice spicy salad, or as we're going to make it into a nice pesto. You can dry it as well, so you can just add it to your food as a kind of a more gentle version of garlic, if you want a gentle version of garlic. You do have to be careful, we're going to say it straight away, because there is a plant that looks quite similar to wild garlic. Its common name is lords and ladies. We'll find out what the proper botanical name is and stick it here. It can be quite similar on first glances, but we're going to try and find both plants so we can show you the difference between the two. Once you can see the difference, you can actually see it quite easily. So the difference isn't actually as easy to see when it's first growing. When it's a little bit older, it's much easier to see the difference, but we're going to hopefully see if we can find some so we can show you. If not, I'll pop a little picture in the video so you can see how similar it is. But you can easily tell the difference between wild garlic and lords and ladies when you pick it, because when you crunch it up, you get that really fragrant garlic smell from wild garlic, which obviously you don't get from lords and ladies.
So now that we've started picking our wild garlic, we've found a perfect example of what they call lords and ladies. It commonly grows within wild garlic patches. It's a definite one to keep an eye out for because it causes respiratory issues when ingested. So as you can see, we've got wild garlic all over this area, and because we're so late in the season, we can actually identify what the actual lords and ladies is. Now the leaves look very similar at first glance, and as when they're younger they are very much a lot more similar, but this is the one that causes a lot of issues. You can see that it's starting to grow itself a stamen. As that matures, it will turn into a clump of red berries that almost looks like a rattlesnake tail. That's the only way that I can describe it. I've only ever really known it as that as a child. But these are the things that we really don't want to be picking. I mean, you can see them hidden about all in this patch of wild garlic, and as I say, at first glance, especially when they're younger, there would be a little bit more of an issue of identifying. So we're going to avoid them, and we're going to try and move on to somewhere else where we can pick some more garlic that's a little less lords and ladies infested.
So here is a really good example of why you need to be careful picking wild garlic and lords and ladies, because this patch here, loads of wild garlic. This one is a lords and ladies. This one is a wild garlic. This one lords and ladies. This one wild garlic. You can see they are definitely different, but they're very, very similar and very close together. This is one of the lords and ladies with the stamen growing out here. So once you know what you're looking for, it does become abundantly obvious. But if we zoom out, on a quick glance and inspection,
Hide and seek.
It is definitely a game of hide and seek. So just a quick example. This is the kind of size that we're looking for our pesto. We don't mind them being a little bit bigger, but if you're going to get a salad, you want more one this kind of size. So you can see the size difference between those two. So if I put them there like that, you can see them against my hand there. Obviously, we might also pop in a couple of the flowers, because the flowers are quite pretty.
So while collecting the wild garlic, we've come across some jelly ear mushrooms and a few other different varieties that I'm not 100% sure of. I'm pretty sure that we found a couple of dryad saddles. We've got a fairly old looking one here, and one that looked like it never really grew very much. And then there are a few high balls. Now they don't have a look with me, but they are very hard. But this tree seems like it's feeding quite a few different varieties at the moment, and it'll end up crushing down to nothing. It already looks like it is, because it's definitely dying wood, but it's all nutrients that will be put back into the ground essentially, so that it's a little bit more fertile for the next coming years. Right, so on further inspection, although I'm still not 100% sure, there's a lot of polypores, these are called, because they don't have gills like normal mushrooms. But I think this is the one that they call the artist bracket, because on the underneath it's a nice sort of white colour, and if you can zoom in closely on it, you can see all the little tiny pores, and that's where the spores will come out of. But I think the reason why they call these artist brackets is that back in medieval times, maybe a little bit, for a long time, they used to be drawn on, and as you can see, that it's quite easy to leave sort of markings on it, and there is actual evidence of them being drawn on in times gone by, in quite spectacular detail as well. So, and it's a very woody, it's not a mushroom that you'd eat, it's very woody and very hard. It will spread its spores and then create a lot more.
So we're almost finished picking for the day. We've got almost a whole basket full of wild garlic. We are now going to head back to the kitchen where we are going to show you how we're going to make our wild garlic pesto and hopefully have some lovely presents for the people helping us out with our wedding.
Yeah, it should be quite good.
Hopefully.
So, just as a word of caution, although you can pick leaves and flowers in the UK out in the wild, it's not advisable that you try to de-root them, because there's a lot of wild plants that are protected by law. So it's probably best that you just you leave them in situ and just take what you need.
That's the rule of foraging, isn't it?
Yes,
just
yeah.
take what you need. At the end of the day, you want to leave enough for other people, and you want to leave enough for the bugs and the pollinators and the animals and all the other bits and pieces that need them. So we've got as much as we need today. There is plenty left.
It's very abundant. Very abundant.
It is a very abundant plant this year, which is pretty good.
Well, we'll be back in the kitchen.
Thank you for joining us for this section. We'll see you back in the kitchen. So welcome back to the kitchen, good lifers. We have just come back. We've bought a whole basket of wild garlic back, so we've got that ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and give all of this wild garlic a wash, because obviously it has been on the ground with God knows what peeing on it, which is not something we really want to put into our pesto. It's really easy to make. It'll only take 5 minutes. So the first thing we're going to do is roughly chop this wild garlic. It says roughly chop. I'm just going to spend some time pulling it apart. I have included some flowers in here, as you can see there. The flowers are quite nice. They give it a different type of taste, and I thought I'd include it in there just for a bit of added excitement, really. I'm not too worried about how I'm going to be chopping these up. These are only being done roughly, so I can pop them in the food processor in a moment. Also gives me a chance to make sure that we haven't picked any lords and ladies, and to pick out any interlopers. This is a little slug that has decided to join us. That one can go away. Unbelievable that slugs decide to join me, not only in my garden, but also in my wildly foraged pesto. Terrible. As you can see in here, this is all kind of roughly chopped here. There's loads more, so this is just the first batch. I'm going to wash this and then drain it with my colander. So I am going to use this little sandwich bowl here to just put any things like dodgy things in. We don't really want that one in there, so I'm going to pop that one in our bowl. And then when I'm washing it, I'm just taking it out, having a quick glance through. Nope, there's no interlopers, there's no bird poop on that. Lovely. So we can take them out. And so you don't have to include the flowers. We've included a few flowers because it just gives it a little bit of visual interest. We want to try and get off as much of that water as possible as well. There is a school of thought to not washing your foraged bits and pieces, but I always kind of think the fewer slugs I can give to our vegetarian guests, probably the better. Those guys can go outside soon, and not in the pesto. So we have actually foraged quite a lot today, which is nice. So I'm just going to take the chopped out wild garlic here and just pop it into our colander and let this drain off nicely. You don't have to worry about this too much, but we do just want to make sure that we get rid of any little interlopers, maybe like little slugs and things. We don't really want to make this in there. Some of our guests are vegetarian, they don't want the extra protein. See, things like that, we obviously don't want that in our pesto, so I'm going to chuck it out. Oh, there's definitely a few manky bits in, which is not really what we want to include. Doing it in small batches as well just allows us to have a quick glance to make sure that there are no slugs. Mostly slugs, to be honest, that I'm concerned about. That and the lords and ladies that we mentioned, but we're pretty sure we didn't pick any of that. But We're not so sure that we didn't pick any slugs. So I'm pretty much finished with chopping these all up and getting rid of our interlopers. There wasn't many of them, thankfully. And thankfully no 8-legged ones, otherwise I'd be freaking out. Luckily in the UK we don't have too many poisonous snakes. I think we've actually only got one, and they're not really that poisonous, the adder. Although, not that I'd want to come into contact with one, to be honest, but we don't have to worry about them. So I'm going to dry this work surface up and then we can get on to making our pesto. One of the things that's really important with this pesto, because we're going to be mixing the wild garlic with oil, I actually want to properly dry out all of our pesto that we've just washed. So this lot here is going to go onto this nice clean towel, and I'm just going to pat it dry. And I promise you this is also a clean towel, it's just come out the wash. It's just very old. And I just want to try and get off most of the water, to be honest. I'm not too worried, but most of it. So I'm going to pop some of that back and just make it a bit of a thinner layer and just pat it dry. Honestly, if you could smell the aroma that is coming through them, it's really amazing. Also gives me another chance to check out, see if I've got any things that aren't supposed to be on here, like whatever this thing is. Don't know. So we have our bowl of roughly chopped wild garlic here. I'm going to let that be for a minute and I'm going to sort out the pine nuts. Although I'm not usually much into following recipes, pretty much every recipe for wild garlic pesto does call for pine nuts, these nuts here. And pretty much every recipe also calls for them to be toasted. So that is just what I'm going to do now. I'm going to quickly just lightly toast them in a dry frying pan with no oil or lard or fat of any kind, because they just need to be toasted. Then I'm going to whiz them up in my blender and add the garlic. So I'm just toasting up these pine nuts here, just keeping them moving a little bit so they don't burn, but it won't take long to toast them up. So you can already see there, some of those colours are beginning to change nicely. We've got some really nice toasted look on them. It's not taken very long at all, and pretty soon these will be done. I don't want to do them so they're overdone or burnt, but they'll be done pretty soon. I've only got one camera on me today, so it's a little bit of a squeeze, but I'm going to take you through popping in all of the bits into our food processor. It's really easy to make this wild garlic, so hopefully you can make some at home as well. Okay, so I'm doing this at a bit of an odd angle so I can show it to you. But the first thing that is going to go in is our toasted pine nuts. I'm just going to pop them into the blender, like this. They're still quite warm, but this blender will be fine. And then we're going to give them a little whiz up. So just on a low heat, or a low setting, just so they get all. So you can see in there, we've got some kind of nice roughly chopped toasted pine nuts in there. It doesn't matter that they're kind of different sizes, because they will honestly all swish up together when we put the garlic in now, which we're just about to do. Okay, so we've got our pine nuts all whizzed up. Now I'm going to start by putting in just a little bit of our wild garlic. I think I'm actually going to need to do this in 2 portions, so I'm going to go and grab my other bowl. I'm actually going to take half of these pine nuts out, roughly half anyway. So we're going to put in some of our roughly chopped wild garlic leaves here. I'm going to try and get quite a few in. And then I'm just going to whiz it down a little bit. You should start to see them incorporating a bit. Good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in some rapeseed oil. That's going to help things to get moving a little bit. There is obviously set amounts you're supposed to use, but I never use recipes really. And that oil helps that to cut down a lot better. So open that up. I'm going to pop in another handful of our wild garlic. Try not to get some on the surface. And I'm going to do another glug of our rapeseed oil. It's going to need a lot of oil in here, so I'm fine with that. And whiz it up again. Going to use our, just to help this move around a little bit. There might be a little bit too much in here, but we'll see. That is looking so good. I might see if I can get one more handful of chopped garlic in there. Again, I'm going to put another glug on top. Good, now I've got that moving, I'm actually going to pop in some salt and some pepper into here. So we've got our nice Cornish sea salt that we absolutely love. So we're going to pop in a little bit of that. Not a huge amount, just a little bit. And some pepper. It's our freshly ground black pepper that we make at home here. We don't grow the pepper, but we do ground it up ourselves. I'm actually going to set my food processor on so it continues whizzing down gently, and I'm going to fill it up with some more rapeseed oil. I've got plenty, so I will just continue filling. Okay, so we're getting a little bit stuck to the side. I'm going to go in and zhuzh it around a bit. Looking really, really good. Some recipes call to put an extra clove of garlic in there. I'm not going to, because as much as I love garlic, this is supposed to be flavoured with wild garlic rather than normal bulb garlic. So I'm actually going to leave that out. It is an optional, so I don't feel bad about leaving that out. Yeah, so I'm really happy with that as a nice kind of pesto-y consistency. That's looking really, really good. I'm going to pop this into, I'm actually going to pop these pine nuts into another bowl, and I'm going to pop the pesto into this bowl here, so that I can mix them all together in a minute. Now that's done, I'm going to go on to making the other half. This is looking super good, already looking absolutely lovely. I'm going to pop in the pine nuts and then just fill it up with some more oil. Some recipes are really interesting because they say that you can use nettle with it as well, half wild garlic and half nettle. That's really interesting. I know you can eat nettles, obviously we talked about that in our first aid barn video, and they are perfectly safe for you to eat. I've only ever eaten them and I've only had really bitter ones, but apparently it's the very, very young leaves that are really nice and edible, but I am yet to be convinced personally. Okay, I would say we have a lovely pesto consistency. Let's pop it in our bowls and mix it around. And there we have it, our nice garlic pesto all whizzed up, ready to go into the jars. You can see it's all whizzed up here, looking absolutely delicious. When we leave it for a moment, the oil does come to the top, which is kind of exactly what we want, because that helps to preserve the pesto. Although once this is opened, obviously they're going to want to put it in the fridge. I will tell them that. So I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. We have got these little jars. I think they're 110 ml. I can't remember how many pounds that is. Sorry guys. I will put it just here. Yeah, these are 110 ml jars. We've got little lids for them. I'm a bit weirded out because normally I use like recycled jars and these are actually brand new. But I figured no, these are gifts, so we'll make them properly. I'm going to try and fill up as many of these jars as I've got. I need 10, so I'm hoping I've got enough mixture here for 10 jars. But if not, we might have to go foraging again during the week and just pick a bit more. I'm going to fill the jars up and then I'm going to set about sealing them. So normally I have my preserving funnel to fill these guys up, but unfortunately my preserving funnel is a bit bigger than the jars, so I'm going to have to just gently spoon the pesto in, which is probably going to make the pesto go everywhere because I'm not the world's most delicate. See, straight away. What I might do is actually do this over the bowl. Yeah, that's a good idea. So this jar is full. I'm going to leave a little bit of headroom in it, and I'm just going to use a chopstick to just poke it down, try and get any bubbles out of it. I'm also going to tap it on the work surface. That should hopefully help it settle and just to help any of those bubbles remove themselves. I know the jar looks a bit messy. I'm going to organise that later, don't worry. So let's get on and fill the rest of them. Okay, as you can see, I have got way more garlic pesto than I have jars ready, so I'm going to go and quickly sterilise these 2 other jars I've got, just because I've got them, and I might as well see if I can put it in there. If not, don't worry, I have plenty of jars, but what I might do is I'm going to pop any leftovers for the minute into the fridge. So I've got all of these jars in there, nicely done. I'm not really too worried about cleaning the outside for the minute, but I do want to just wipe the rim round, because that's going to be really important when we come to sealing the jars. So I'm just going to do that. I am using a paper towel for this, because anything that involves oil I prefer to use a paper towel with, because otherwise our tea towels just get really messy and then we lose them earlier than we would do. So just wiping that top rim around, and then we're going to go and set about warming them up so that we can get them all sealed. And if you are worried, the paper towels are going to go straight into the compost, so at least they can be composted and we don't feel like we're being too wasteful. Okay, all of the rims are sealed. As you can see, I've left a little bit of headroom here. I've cleaned all the rims off here, so they should be nice and free of any oil or any bits and pieces like that. Now I can get on to sealing them. They've come with lids, so I'm just going to use the lids that come with them. Nice and easy, and they will look lovely. But first I want to warm these up, and I want to warm the lids up so that when we do put them on and they cool down, they seal up nicely. Okay, as you can see, that's nice and boiling up now. These are getting nice and warm. They're not hot, but they're a little bit warm to the touch, which is great. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start popping the jar lids on, and I'm going to make sure they're actually fairly tight on there so that they can develop a nice seal. All of our lids are on and we are ready to think about pulling these out. They're definitely a little bit warm to the touch. I don't know where my jar lifter is, so I'm using barbecue tongs. Definitely not recommended. Definitely get a set of good jar lifters, because this is not a good idea. But it's the only idea I have, so we'll go with it. Now I have these over here, while they're cool, they literally just come over. I'm just going to grab hold of them really quickly and make sure those lids are done up nice and tight so that they can develop a nice good seal while they cool down. There we go. Obviously I'm using surface savers because they are very hot currently. I want to make sure that they're all nice and going to cool down with a good seal on them. There we go, they're all done. So now I'm going to leave them to cool down. They're not overly hot, but they're warm enough to make a good seal. So hopefully we will come back in a few hours and they'll be lovely and cool. And there we have it, good lifers. Our garlic pesto is all lovely and made, all jarred up. The only thing left for me to do is write a nice little label on it so I can say what it is and what it contains. I'm pretty sure none of our guests are allergic to nuts, but I will just obviously pop on there that there are pine nuts in there. And it was that simple, nice and easy. I hope that you enjoyed the video and you were able to follow along. And I'm really glad that we get to give our guests a lovely little homemade gift to go in their little homemade goodie bag. So thank you for joining us today. It's been lovely to have you along and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye!